Hello and welcome back to the Book Insight. This is a podcast where I read, review, and interview the authors to get a better understanding of their perspective on their books. I'm your host, Sophia, and today I will be reviewing my new favorite book, The Eye of Darkness by K.L. Hawker. The Dreamkeeper series is a young adult book series that is made up of 5 novels. The series follows a teenage girl from Nova Scotia, Sarah Marley, who lives in foster care and knows very little of her past, except that she was abandoned when she was 3 years old. In the first book, Sarah starts to have dreams that are very vivid and real, and the hot guy that she's been having dreams about randomly shows up at her school, causing her best friend and longtime crush, Drew, to become jealous and suspicious. Through a series of near-death experiences, Sarah discovers that Luke is from a dangerous world, which she can access through her dreams. There are 3 dream worlds, 3 are light worlds, Nevaeh, Yelram, and Lorendale, and 3 are dark worlds, Leviathan, Etak, and Nitsua. The book that I recently read is the 4th book in the series. At this point, Sarah has discovered that she was born in one of the dream worlds and plays an important part in that world's destiny. With the help of Drew, Luke, and her best friend Maddie, Sarah has unlocked her world and discovered that it's been taken over by monsters, which they have to fight in order to find a cure to the deadly sickness that she was infected with while fighting a beast in the previous book. This is a very special episode because I got to interview a local Nova Scotian author in person. Kim Hawker grew up in Nova Scotia, where she wrote stories during her childhood that made her imagination take her all over the world. As an adult and an amazing mom of 3, she is still a keen writer and dreamer. Thank you so much for letting me interview you today. Before we get started, can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you for having me, Sophia. I am an author, a mother, a wife, a life coach, where I work with youth for youth mental health coach, and I also write books. So I believe that's what you're having me here for today.
Yes, it is. What are or were the obstacles you faced as an author?
Well, I'd say the biggest obstacle was making time to write, because I also homeschool children, and when you don't know if you're going to be successful at something, it's hard to justify putting a few hours a day aside to just write. And when you're writing, you need to be in that creative zone, which means people can't come knocking at the door and interrupting you to make a sandwich or this or that. So that was probably the biggest obstacle, was prioritizing myself and saying that these are the hours that I'm going to be writing. No one's allowed to talk to me, basically. Scheduling myself, I guess. That was probably the hardest thing to do.
Okay, awesome. What are your favorite or recommended books?
That's a good one. I love fantasy adventure books like Harry Potter and Hunger Games, Twilight.
Yes.
Yeah. Those are kind of like my favorite. Fablehaven. Then I like some classics too. Anna Green Gables will always hold a special place in my heart. So those kind of books. Anything with fantasy in it is kind of where I like to be.
Yes, I love the Twilight series and the Hunger Games also. So.
Yep.
What inspired you to write the Dreamkeeper series?
The Dreamkeeper series came after the Branded trilogy, which was inspired by my son, who wasn't able to read a full-length novel, so I wanted to write something dialogue-rich, fast-paced, something that I knew would hold his attention for reluctant readers. So that was created inspired by him. And then the Dreamkeeper series was inspired because I couldn't let go of those characters.
Yes.
I love them, but it was clearly the end for that trilogy. So I kind of was able to reuse a couple of the characters and then make a new series out of it. So that's where that came from.
Have you ever struggled with writer's block, and what did you do to get around it?
It's a very real thing, and you have to be patient with yourself as you work through it, because it's not something you can just drink a cup of milk and then suddenly, I got my...
Yes.
Yeah, so I will often take a side character that doesn't have a whole lot to do with the story, and then I'll write a short story based on them. And then I know that it's not important to the story, but it helps me get back into the groove of writing and being creative that way.
Never heard of that, but I think I might actually try that
Yeah, it's
when I
kinda
try to
fun.
write a story. How do you develop your plot and characters?
So this is a little weird, but
You love weird.
I like to people watch, and I'll often watch people at the mall or downtown. Don't think I'm weird, but creepy. But I like to watch people and then create stories for what I think they do in their lives. And everybody has issues, drama, whatever. So I like to like, everyone's all put together when they're out and on social media. And I like to pretend that, what if they have this going on in their life, and how would that work out if they were this, a lawyer, and their husband was this, and then their kids did that. And anyway, so I like to kind of play around with different plot ideas. And so, yeah, I base characters off of people that I know sometimes, their personalities, and who I think would gel well with other people, or who would not gel well, and then I kind of put them into a story. So
I like that a lot. Which of the characters do you relate to the most, and why?
Probably, I guess, the main characters, because I have to. So you really have to get inside their heads, yeah. But the main character of my first trilogy was based off of my son, so I really kind of felt like I got into, well, I knew him really well, so I kind of got into his character. And then the Dreamkeeper series, the main character is a girl, so a little easier, and I drew on some experiences that I had as a teenager too, so it was kind of fun to write from her perspective at 17, where I was quite different at 17 because I didn't have these superpowers and all that sort of stuff, but I like to pretend that I did. So yeah, I think I connect well with the main characters probably. And then the like Maddie in the book, she was kind of created off of my niece, Maddie. So she's small and spunky and blonde hair, and she's just so I was able to kind of like, I didn't really have to create a whole character for her because I already had one that I just based her off of. But yeah, so I connect well with those characters.
I like that you take the real people from real experiences and just put them together into a book.
Yeah.
I really like that. How do you come up with character names for your stories?
Basically, I just think of names that I like. For Maddie, I used Maddie, but I don't often do that because, some people could get upset or think that it's about them when it's not, because sometimes I'll use friends' names, but the character doesn't have anything to do with them, although they think that it does, which can cause tension, I guess. But yeah, so basically names that I like, and depending on the character, sometimes I've switched character names halfway through writing books. Yeah, and that's kind of hard too, because then you get used to calling them one name, and then you suddenly decide I can't use that name for whatever reason, or it's too close to another name. That's the other thing, is you try not to pick character names that are too close to each other, where the reader might get confused or quickly read the wrong name when they're reading. So I've had to switch names, but I kind of just go through names that I like, or the people that I know that are in my life that I want to use their names. So.
I remember one time you asked Marley and I, hey, do you guys have any name ideas? And we were just, we just searched them up on Google and just reading them to you, and that was really fun.
I go to like the 100 best baby names of 2000 and then pick from there.
Awesome. What is the most valuable piece of advice you've been given about writing?
Don't give up. And also to write without editing first. So a lot of people get stuck in the trying to edit the first paragraph or first chapter, and then they can't get on to the second one. I just write, and my first draft is super raw. It's like there's a lot of like repetitive words, or just things that I hopefully tease out in the editing process, but just to get it all out first and not worry about what it sounds like to somebody else. It's your art, and not everyone's going to love your art, so you have to kind of accept that as well and be okay with that. So you just write and do what makes you happy. Do it for you.
I love that. Thank you so much for letting me interview with you again. I had a great time.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
I would definitely recommend the Dreamkeeper series to anyone who loves young adult fantasy novels or just wants something totally new to read. It's a great series with a really good plot and relatable characters. It's full of action and battles and valuable lessons about life, love, and friendship. I also recommend her other series called Branded. If you want to find more about Kim and her books, you can go to her website at klhawker.com. That's in all lowercase klhawker.com. Well, that's a wrap for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Kim. I had a great time learning about her life of being an author and her perspective on her books. See you all next week. The intro song for this podcast was written and sung by Kate Hawker. Huge thanks to my executive producer, Alex MacAulay, and a special thanks to my English teacher, Miss DeMel, for inspiring me to make this episode.
Gonna be young, young, young. I can't